outdoor faucet and secure it snugly. Also remember to disconnect hoses, open cabinet doors under sinks, and let faucets drip during extreme cold. Call or text to check availability, and from our family to yours, please stay warm and protected.
Mississippi's trusted weather experts. This is Mississippi Live Weather at 6.
Well, thank you so much for watching us here on Mississippi Live Weather at 6. I'm Chief Meteorologist Matt Lopon. We have a packed newscast here over the course of the next few minutes with a lot of different things to get you prepared and give you hopefully additional knowledge on where we go from here as far as active weather is concerned. Again, thank you so much for supporting us here on Mississippi Live Weather. We're going to be talking about travel impacts and the possibility of power outages. To that point, we'll talk to Scott Hendricks, who is the CEO of the Tom Bigby Electric Power Association. You know, a lot of things flying around social media on what ice means what. We will hear from the source on where they start to get concerned and how our icing situation compares to that sort of level. That's coming up here in a couple of minutes. Only on Mississippi Live Weather, we're looking at Snow Eater. Now, I just kind of threw out the term. It's something we talk about behind the scenes. We have a graphic that will show you that above the surface warm layer that's going to try to eat into the wintry precipitation, where that's at, how that affects us, coming up here in a couple minutes. We'll also get you prepared by looking at the type of icing. I want to be crystal clear here. Most of us, if we see wintry weather, it will be ice of some sort, either sleet or freezing rain. How do you prepare? And what do you need to know and where? We're breaking down all of that information here in a couple of moments. The headline tonight, again, accumulating snowfall. Confidence level on that continues to decrease. Confidence level on icing in some form or fashion continues to increase. Hence our concerns related to power outages and all that sort of stuff. Not an everybody thing, but the possibility is there for some. We're looking at heavy rainfall encroaching in, becoming more of a threat for locations. Golden Triangle. We're hoping that that's all it is for some spots there, but that might be very optimistic thinking. And then travel troubles with sub-freezing temperatures certainly possible as well. It's just rainfall as we go through the first 12 here, as we expect, again, conditions to continue to just be fairly mild, honestly, as we go into this evening. And this is all in the green there on Mississippi Alive Mama Justice Doppler radar at this time, kind of this shield of rainfall that's sort of moved through the area kind of from west to east. And again, I don't have anything on our scale there, even it's kind of in the orange. So no rumbles, nothing that is overly strong or particularly concerning at this time. Rainfall amounts, again, have not been terribly impressive so far today. 24-hour rainfall amounts in the neighborhood, as you can see there, where we show some of the greens on that. Some of there around a couple, tenth, a quarter of an inch there, and fairly widespread scale. And in some spots, probably more than an inch of rainfall. So kind of nice to actually have a little bit of that for a change as part of this. Behind this storm system here, though, we are watching a much more active one that will bring us a lot more active weather as we go into the extended forecast. I'm going to go a lot wider here. We're going to bring our water vapor perspective here so we can kind of show, again, it's not that high. It's this big spin back toward the west coast. And the fact that it's so far away and it's going to take so long to get here, one of those factors that probably limits our knowledge on how this really fully kind of develops as we go forward. But across the southeast, again, we do have those winter storm watches that are already in place for our region. But again, it's going to be after this rainfall moves on out of here. So as we progress through tonight, one of the things, again, at 10 o'clock we'll be looking at here in the Room to Room Weather Center is just rainfall on Mama Justice Doppler radar, and just rainfall tomorrow morning with our meteorologist, Maggie McCauley. But then as we go beyond that, we get some cold air in here, and then much, much colder air that's still up to the north that eventually will filter in. And that's the stuff that really could be the real tricky part. Because again, while it is cold here, there's a lot colder air up north that will filter in and be the real trouble once that gets here. And that's one of the things that into next week could keep whatever icing situation around. So as we look at the first 24 hours here, tomorrow morning, again, fairly light in the way of precipitation there initially in the morning. And honestly, we keep any precipitation light with temperatures upper 40s at noontime, low 50s as we look toward 3 p.m. And we do expect, again, way above freezing. So this is all just rainfall. Now, coming up here in 60 seconds, we're going to break down a couple things. Again, you can see only here on Mississippi Live. First off, we're going to talk about that snow eater eventually. We're going to look at how the wind figures in related to this. We're also going to look at that radial and horizontal icing. What does that mean? Horizontal is when you're trying to drive, the stuff that's all over the ground. Radial is the stuff that gets on power lines, that gets on trees and causes all the issues there. We'll talk about, obviously, the differences, but in particular, we'll look at the way the accumulation related to this could work out here in a couple minutes. As my alerts continue to go off there, remind you the conversation is ongoing in the Facebook, YouTube, X, all of those different chats. Join the conversation, ask your questions. This is going to be a long discussion here. So buckle in, you'll know everything you need to know by the end of this, and hopefully we'll answer all the questions you need to know, other than exact amounts. But we're going to talk about the impacts and where our confidence does continue to increase as Mississippi Live Weather continues here from the Room to Room Weather Center right after this.
Game day brings its ups and downs, celebration and disappointment, anxiety and relief, friends and enemies. You can always argue over who should have won, but everyone can agree on great food. Appetizers, entrees, drinks, party platters, or even the taste of sweet victory. There's something for every season at Eat With Us restaurants.
Out with the old and in with the new. It's time to save big at Room to Room's New Year's sale. Store-wide markdowns 50 to 70% off. No tax. 48-month special financing. It's a new year at Room to Room Furniture in Tupelo. There's no place like home.
When choosing a dentist for our family, Tupelo Smiles was the answer for us. They greet us with warm smiles right when we walk in the door, and they make us feel so welcome. We love Tupelo Smiles.
This portion of Mississippi Live Weather is presented by Little's Jewelers.
Right now, from the Room to Room Weather Center, here's Mississippi's Chief Meteorologist, Matt Lobhon.
Thank you so much for supporting us here on Mississippi Live Weather. I'm Chief Meteorologist Matt Lawpon, and outside in Crenshaw, one of the locations where the North Mississippi Storm Chasers have a camera, one of the spots where that likelihood of icing remains the most significant. There is going to be some of us that have, before this is all done, between sleet and freezing rain, half inch or more of ice could be a significant underestimation. We're hoping the rainfall dominates more than that, but hope doesn't mean action. And so we need to be preparing accordingly just in case that is not the way this works out. Again, Crenshaw, one of those spots we'll be watching. Also out there, really all of our locations in the Delta, some concerns because that cold air, because of the elevation. Cleveland, one of those locations where, again, it will be cold enough. We're looking at 48 right now. Again, we're looking this weekend. That's the time frame that we're certainly concentrating largely. And join the conversation with us. You can do that again in our chat ongoing on YouTube, as well as Facebook and all the different social medias there as far as that's concerned. You know, talking about ice storm coming. Hopefully that's not the case, but certainly we are prepping like it could potentially become the case. So as we walk through this again, winter storm watches, they are in effect for all locations around the region, stretching for more than 1,000 miles back all the way there. You can see the Arizona and then back to practically the East Coast. We're right in the middle of this swath. So unfortunately, fortunately, however you want to view it, we are definitely not alone as far as this threat for winter weather and all of its impacts are concerned. Winter storm watches are issued, and then they're followed up with by either winter weather advisories, an upgrade, which would say, hey, there's travel disruptions possible, and winter storm warnings where plan on parking it where you're at. That's where you need to be. That's where you need to stay. And so that's the, kind of contrast there that we're dealing with this. We expect those upgrades to those warnings are probably going to be forthcoming. So again, join the conversation here. We appreciate all the folks for doing that there. Also, I'm wondering, it doesn't look like our chat is actually updating at the moment. Is that an accurate description of that, Gabe? I'm gonna bring Gabe up here.
I tried texting you and letting you know. Restream is not allowing chats up right now. I tried refreshing it and it's still not updating. But chats are coming in. They're just not on Restream.
Huh, that's interesting. Okay, well, we'll go and take that down if they're not on there at the moment, and we'll get that figured out as well. But winter storm watches, either way, already in effect, and that has nothing to do with this. Mama Justice Doppler radar, it's just green, going to stay that way. These showers are light. They've been consistent today, adding up to I tried this a minute ago, and the mode it was in, I don't think it'll kind of pull it up either. But again, most of that rainfall kind of moving through, and it's been pretty consistent through the day as well. We've had, again, moderate rainfall from time to time, but really no rumbles of thunder or lightning to go along with that out of any of this there. So again, school bus forecast tomorrow. While there's chances for rainfall, we're well above the freezing point. You're going to school Thursday. You're probably going to school Friday. You're probably making it home from school in good shape Friday afternoon as well. Again, I appreciate IMPC for sponsoring our school bus forecast for you. So let's talk about something you'll see only here on Mississippi Live. We're going to play it through, and then we're going to come back. This is radial icing. Radial icing is if you look at this pen I'm holding here. Maybe we need something a little thinner. So I'm going to use this apparently spooky pencil, right? So this pencil, when you look at it dead on, doesn't have, a large width to it. But if you were to put ice at a level around it, that ice would, make it much, much larger, right? So you would add the layers to it. So radial icing is basically the ice that goes around, it's radius. When you think of a circle, you have the radius, which is half the diameter. So if you add some of these ice totals you see behind me here to every tree branch, every power line, that's where we start dealing with the kind of icing that causes some power disruptions. It's not super significant on our strike model yet, but I want to tell you that strike is underdoing precipitation in comparison to some other projections. So I keep that in mind with this, but it does have, again, this kind of stripe out here for locations back out from Greenville, possibly up here, Grenada, back toward Yalobusha County, back into Oxford, Tupelo, Pontotoc, Chickasaw County. We are in kind of this stripe where the radial icing could be at its peak. Again, this is presently Wednesday that we're talking about this. By Thursday, Friday, Saturday, still 3 days, and there will be a lot of movement and positioning. The big takeaway is this. If we're going to see wintry weather, it's going to probably be some form of ice, and at least a decent chunk of it could potentially be the kind of ice that ends up coating all of those different surfaces that makes the trees have more weight to them, makes the power lines have more weight. Again, we'll talk to Scott Hendricks with the Tom Bigby Electric Power Cooperative. He's the CEO there, about some of the impacts, how his crews are getting ready for this coming up here in a few minutes. So let's go ahead and look at horizontal icing. And horizontal icing is, again, flat surfaces, something you'll see only on Mississippi Live. And so we break down the differences there. When we're talking about flat surfaces, you'll notice the amount of icing through this event is more significant. And really, the total icing is when you combine these two things together. And so we're looking at horizontal icing, where you see some of these kind of purple and blue colors on here. I mean, we're talking well over an inch of ice that accumulates on the ground. So what is that? That is partially going to be some, obviously sleet, but also freezing rain. And when I say rain, I want to be clear that freezing rain kind of looks like rain, but instantly freezes when it comes in contact. So as much as I might say rain, 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 if we're below freezing at the surface, that freezes on contact, that is then significant icing there. That's more likely to be the radial icing. So this could be, to a certain extent, where some of that sleet component comes in to go along with this. But these are fairly high values out here into Arkansas and stretching again through the northwest portion of the state. And yes, I mean, this is an early number. It will change dramatically as the positioning on this changes. But this is what then sets us to probably be stuck in locations for a fairly extended period of time. But one thing you will also note on here is where locations south and east don't have anything. Well, that's where that snow eater comes in. We'll look at that more detail here in a couple of moments. So Futurecast in the near term here, again, we're kind of ahead of all this here. We continue to have, again, those showers fairly widespread, kind of moving from the west to east through the area. Moderate rainfall, but again, all just rainfall as we head into tonight and the first part of your Thursday morning. Thursday starting off with temperatures upper 30s, lower 40s. Wind chills probably a little cooler than this, but again, above freezing, it's all just rainfall. As we go throughout your Thursday, again, some showers out there. The majority of those mainly to our east and southeast. You'll notice how we have our front down there in the South Mississippi and Louisiana. Moisture is going to start trying to roll north of this. And that, again, is one of the things that will feed into some of the rain chances that eventually change to freezing rain, sleet, And for locations mainly to the north and west of us, some snowfall chances as well there. But not for Thursday. That's the weekend. Thursday, it's just green, it's just wet, it's just liquid. It's nothing more than that. 52 high in Water Valley, 54 degrees in Grenada, 53 for Eupora and Starkville, and 51 degrees in Tupelo and the Amory area. So Futurecast keeps us, again, just liquid as we head into late Thursday evening, late Thursday night. Even at that point in time, for locations back out onto the plains, it's still just all liquid out that direction as well at that point. And, you know, my group chat here with a number of other meteorologists at other locations, you know, we have folks that are back into Oklahoma, back into Arkansas, Louisiana, and Missouri, all preparing again for this exact same system, all kind of discussing it. So it's kind of a meeting of the minds here on Mississippi Live Weather, our network of meteorologists. And again, all expecting to have some issues, but not until the weekend. We're above freezing for early Friday morning there. So again, above freezing as we go throughout your Friday. And so you're going to school Friday morning, you're in good shape. We're keeping it dry for the most part and above freezing as we head through your Friday. But notice the first signs, again, a little bit of that moisture. I'll go and back it up here for a second. And again, show you that moisture coming out here from Little Rock, Arkansas, kind of the first signs, a little more trying to kind of roll in. And this is kind of the first big shield of that mix that is rain as well as freezing rain, but really probably more rain and sleet with some snowfall mixed with that farther north there. But in North Mississippi, we're still 3 p.m., 4 p.m., 5 p.m., just in the rainfall at that point in time. Could you see a sleet pellet or two? Absolutely. Could Futurecast be a little warm? I do think that this particular strike model you see above me is on the warmer end of the spectrum, but that has been the trend, warmer over the last couple of days. So high temperatures, we're going mid-30s for South Haven. We're going about 40 for Oxford, 46 degrees in Bruce and Houston, as well as Eupora, 51 there in Kosciuszko, and 46 back for Belzona, again, above the freezing point. Now, here's Futurecast leading into the overnight hours and early morning on your Saturday. You'll notice how we, again, have that green for quite a few spots here, but we also have a lot of the pink. The pink is a mix that includes rain, freezing rain, as well as sleet, and maybe even a little snowfall back north and west. And so it's a mix because above the surface temperatures are warmer. We'll show Snow Eater here in a moment, and that will kind of explain that hopefully a little more detail. But on the kind of widespread scale here, we are no pretty snowflakes in all likelihood for the overnight hours leading early Saturday for most of North Mississippi. Now, Northwest Mississippi out here toward Memphis, Olive Branch, Forest City, still possible. But as we look at Snow Eater, that possibility is something we still call into question. We talked about this at 5. This is on the colder end of our model projections because dense cold air sometimes slides farther south than expected. Some models are warmer than this, but as you can see, a few folks close to the freezing point, maybe even a little bit above that as that warmer air moves out of the south. Okay, we've teased it enough. This is Snow Eater, something you'll see only here on Mississippi Live. What we have is we're looking at the temperature at the surface, that's the numbers. But this line that you see kind of going across here, that represents temperatures aloft. If you go up about a mile in the atmosphere, there's warmer air that's charging northward. And that warmer air is, well, maybe charging northward's overstating it, but there's warm air there that's trying to kind of hold this line north. Everywhere south of this line, whatever starts off as snow melts into something else. Hence the reason I've been kind of calling it Snow Eater, because it takes what would be pretty snowflakes, what everyone wants to pack and make memories with, and it starts melting it. Once it melts it, then it changes it over into something else. Does it refreeze quickly? It becomes sleet. Does it melt completely and not freeze until contact? That's when it becomes ice. And so that's obviously the concern that you possibly have it take that step and become that. And so you'll notice that that Snow Eater sits above most of North Mississippi as we progress 10 a.m., 11 a.m. through noontime there on your Saturday. And so for most of us, all the snow is melting. It then comes down to the surface temperature. Are we 32 like we show here in Bruce, Houston, or Tupelo? Or are we a little colder than that? Like what Gabe and I were showing you for our projected low temperatures in the morning. Most indications have a warm nose out here where it's predominantly rainfall. I'm hoping Macon it's you, but into Alabama, that is most certainly the case. We're hoping that that trends northward and transitions more of this to rainfall. But as you can see, with temperatures at 32, this would all be falling as a cold rain that then freezes on contact and becomes ice that then can cause troubles. To discuss this in more detail and how the amounts of ice kind of work with this, we do have one of the folks here again with the Tom Bigby Electric Power Cooperative. I want to bring in, this is Scott Hendricks joining us live here on Mississippi Live Weather. Appreciate you for, talking with us. I'm a meteorologist. I can tell you kind of numbers, but you understand the impacts to your crews in the field. Where do you start to get concerned on the amount of ice? Where do they tell you that like this is going to be bad? What's kind of that beginning threshold for how that develops?
If you're talking about a half inch of ice on power lines, that begins to be a problem. Certainly up to 3/4 an inch or more, anything there can cause issues. You're adding weight to the line. The line is sufficiently sagged. It's hanging a distance, probably 250 feet between poles. And so any weight you add to that causes stress to the line. Now, it'll hold a lot of weight, but if you start having a buildup at all, you have to be concerned. My crews have to be concerned because normally, if it's freezing rain that falls to the ground or sleet that falls to the ground, you have issues driving. You have people hitting poles. That's your concern. You have issues with trees falling, maybe. But on the lines, the more weight you add to them, the more concern you have about what can happen, Matt. And so if we see it freezing on the lines at all, we begin to be worried. And if it gets up above a half inch, we get real concerned. And then it's a good while after that before it's a real problem. But if you see it accumulating, that's the issue. If it falls as water, like you just said a minute ago, it's a significant risk.
Okay, and I do think that I think it's pretty good indications that a lot of this does fall as water. One of the things I find interesting looking at this particular projection is, as you know, there's a zillion different models we can look at here, and it's showing about 0.3 of an inch of ice. And again, this is our first time really working with this, but you mentioned half inch of ice. Would that be the line is a half inch with the ice on it? Or would that be like a half inch on a radius all the way around it? Just so I'm kind of understanding, so I'm interpreting that correctly.
Approaching a half inch radius all the way around it.
Okay.
A quarter inch is there. You're having buildup. That's a concern. It should hold that weight. Somewhere between a quarter and a half, you start to have significant weight. And you get above that, you're going to have sag. You're going to have issues. And any stress could cause damage to a pole, could have a line fall. And we will warn everybody, if you see a line down, treat it as hot. It may be a fiber line, it may be somebody else's communication line, or maybe our power line, but assume it's a hot electric line and a line down, we need to know. You need to call. You may have trouble getting through if we've got lots of outages, but you need to call.
And I think that's one thing that we obviously ask for patience, which is hard, when you're cold, when you have all the issues because we have so much electric heat nowadays. But patience, just because your crews are going to be working as fast as they can, but you're prepared. Like this is something that you do training for and prepare for. And if this is serious, that there are people around that hopefully will be able to chip in and help because you have those kind of agreements already in place.
There are mutual aid agreements between every cooperative in the state of Mississippi. Every municipal system in the state of Mississippi has a similar arrangement. Every state in the Southeast, I can't speak beyond the Southeast, has an arrangement. The scary part about a storm like this is, and I don't know exactly where all you said it's going to happen, but if it happens from Texas to the coast, there's lots of states involved, and those are normally the states that help us. During Hurricane Helene, we went to Georgia. We went to South Florida. We headed east, and all those people would head north if we had ice. They can go. Tom Bigby has more staff than we've ever had. We're doing better right of ways than we have. I think we've hired extra crews. We put in extra equipment. The more trees you cut, and people don't always like their trees cut, and we hate to cut trees. Trees are beautiful. But the more trees you cut back off the right of way, the less chance you have of a tree falling into the line. So if that's been sufficiently done, your biggest risk then is ice accumulation on the line. And we just have to hope for the best. If you're in that 0.3 of an inch, that's a good weather report. I hope that's what we get because that has less risk than half of an inch, has less risk than 3/4 of an inch. So that's what we face. But we do train for this. We prepare the right of ways every day. Crews cut every day during business hours of the year. We went and cut some danger trees today just to do a little extra. Trucks are fueled. We've got poles extra coming in. We'll have them staged on trucks. We'll have some transformers on trucks. We're as ready as we can get. We just don't know where we're going to have an issue. I hope we don't. It's always best to prepare for the worst and hope for the best, and that's certainly where we are. But we will do our best, and patience is the key. We will work till we get it back on. We will get help when we need it. We will have people come in, and we will work. Cooperatives are great. Well, municipal systems are great. They work together very well. We've helped municipal systems in the past, and during events of tragedies, I know they would help us. So it's a situation where we all work together because our goal is to get everybody back on as soon as possible. We want everybody warm. We want everybody safe. We want you to have the power you need. That's our job, and we take it very seriously.
You know, one of the things that we're trying to, again, with new technology, understand this, and unfortunately we have to understand some of this in real time here, the ability to kind of decipher between the radial icing, which has major impacts with you, and then the horizontal icing, which I think has more of a sleek component that then has impacts on travel. And so to give you the weighting on that, you know, we will know a lot more about how this performs after the fact. But I think one of the concerns is the significant time period there, the more than 24-hour window where we have the opportunity for icing, and then the concerns that then causes, because you try to get your folks out as soon as possible. But the reality is that if they're in the ditch, if they can't travel, you know, there's only so much they can do initially there. So I know that's obviously, you know, one of the concerns that you have. And I would say that, you know, in the chat, 1994 keeps popping up. I did not live here in 94. Heard from DeLusick over and over again about 94 and every single person I've met since. One of the big improvements I think you mentioned is the right-of-ways and what you guys do to the right-of-ways. The 94, that was not the case. And so that helps the situation some, right?
Absolutely. And I know the people that worked here in 94, so I cast no aspersions. They were doing what they had always done. 94 was a historic storm. We learned from that. We widened right of ways, we cut more seriously, and we've continued to cut more seriously each and every year. You had systems all across Mississippi, and I was in college. I wasn't in this job, but I lived through it. I drove through it. I'll tell you some good stories about that sometime, but it was a horrific event. And those right of ways were cut far less than we cut today. And we learned a big lesson for that. Now you had years after 94 where there was nothing left in the right of way that you were safe. But since then we've had to get aggressive as we can cutting for a day like today. When you have straight line winds come through, trees matter. When you have tornadoes come through, trees matter. When you have an ice storm, you have two concerns: frozen lines and falling branches and trees. And so you cut right away every day. We bought mulching machines for both of my branch offices. We've put on 10 extra people. We're doing more on the right of way than we have in the history that I remember. And I've been around a year or two. So that's what you do. That's the lesson learned from 94. I hope we've done a sufficient job at that. It's a balancing act. You cut between customers' needs. You hate to cut a green tree. You hate to cut too many limbs off a tree, but sometimes you have to. And it's days like today that those limbs that we cut matter. Each and every one we cut will save an hour for somebody to get their power back on, or keep somebody from going out. So hopefully we've done a good job at that. We're ready. We have four-wheel drive trucks. And those four-wheel drive trucks on ice can get you going, but can't always stop you. So you still have to be slow and methodical about how you get there. We have track machines that we didn't used to have, that we can set poles with track machines. We can have track buckets. We are better equipped today than we've ever been. Are you ever ready for anything that can come? No, but you train, you do your best. You teach people, you stand on the shoulders of those you come from, you take their knowledge and you grow from it, and you make your system better. You better equip, you better staff, and you get ready as best you can. And that's where I hope we find ourselves. I was in a room with a bunch of utility managers today, both municipal and cooperative, and everybody's concerned. Everybody has to face what we're facing, and we're all ready to help each other. I had calls from my friends in Tennessee. They stand ready to come help with fiber or electric. We just have to work together and get through this. Hopefully it's nothing. Hopefully the ice is on the ground and everybody stays home. Nobody drives into a pole. Everybody stays safe. And we have a nice time by a warm fire and power stays on. If it goes out, we'll do our best to get it back on. Watch the outage map. Do call if you see lines down, broken poles. We need that information. The outage map doesn't tell us that. If your power is just off, most likely we know, because this will be in widespread areas. And give us time to get there. We can't answer every call, but we'll call in troops. We've got call center folks that are from around this parts and around Jackson, Mississippi, and or some in Alabama that can answer the phone. So we'll have people answering the phone, and we'll get there. And we don't stop till we get it back up, and we'll get help when we
Well, we
need it.
appreciate all that hard work that y'all put on, and put in for this. We know that it's a lot of prepping for days like this. That we often talk about that with severe weather. It's the day you hope doesn't come that you prepare every day for, and so we appreciate that. Scott Hendricks with the Tom Bigby Electric Power Cooperative. Thank you so much for joining us here on Mississippi Live. We probably will end up talking with you in the next few days, kind of how things progress. Anything else you want to add, real quick?
I would add one thing. Lots of people have gone out
Yeah.
and bought generators. They learned from 1994 as well. A generator is a fine piece of equipment to have. If you have it for your house, it's great. Be sure it's professionally installed or you've had professional advice, because a generator can backfeed a line and put my crews at risk. A generator, even a small one, can kill a lineman if you've backfed the line and they believe it dead from all other purposes. So use your generator safely and be careful there. If you don't know, ask someone. Make sure you're not backfeeding lines. I can't say that's enough. That and driving these trucks on icy roads is the most dangerous thing we face in a storm. Otherwise, it's working to get you back up. Thanks, Matt. Thanks for having us. Anytime you need us the next few days, we're around. We'll be in 21. We stayed at the office for 3 nights in a row and stayed there 24/7. I hope that's not the case, but we're prepared.
Yeah.
We've got the air mattresses. We've been our own trip to the grocery store, stocked up on our own milk and eggs, and we're ready to cook for the guys and keep them working as much as we need to work. So thank you for
We
having us.
appreciate that. Well, thank you so much
Take care.
for all the hard work you and your folks do. We'll talk to you all soon here. That's Scott Hendricks with the Tom Bigby Electric Power Cooperative there. Again, important reminder at the end. Generators need to be used safely. 2 ways in which you make sure that happens. You want to make sure they're not backfeeding the line, meaning, you're out, you plug it into something, and yeah, it seems to happen to work in your house. But if it's not hooked up correctly, major issues could come along with that. And that could include killing the people trying to put the power back on for you. And then the other factor is the exhaust component, that they need to be far enough away from your structure so that you don't have carbon monoxide issues with the exhaust. And so again, that's the reason why, if at all possible, professionally installed. If you're going to be powering more than just an extension cord into your house, need to be professionally installed. So I know a lot of folks will be breaking out those generators. Hopefully we can get through this safe, not just for our families, but for the people trying to get the power back on. You've seen the 7-day forecast. And again, the cold air behind this is a concern on how long this lingers. That's one of the things we're talking about right after this commercial break with our meteorologist, Gabe, as well as other winter safety tips. And we're going to go in depth. Unfortunately, we can't show the chat, but we're going to be able to talk about the things we're later in a moment. So we'll be right back after this.
It's an ITM banking.
When you've been injured, lawyer who live. Call Langston and Lott. Local lawyers, personal service, real results.
To be live up on here, wind gusts that compound component, because there's the weight added by the ice, but then there's also when the wind kind of stresses out a little farther. This 8 hours from now into your weekend forecast. So give me a second to kind of get that back up, and into Friday evening and into Saturday. Notice how we continue to have some higher wind gust amounts. One of the things that I find fascinating on this, we talked about this last night, our meteorologist Gabe Maynard and I. I'm going to bring Gabe in here as we kind of here for a moment. I'm gonna force this onto the monitor back behind you there. So kind of point that back. I don't know if that's an error or if it's... I'm really interested on just how high it has some of those. I'm largely throwing out the numbers that aren't the 20, 25, because I don't know if it's just exactly what it's seeing where it has those isolated wind gusts, where it's just mixing down maybe some showers, mixing down stronger winds from a loft. I know, right? I think that's overdone. So I'm going to throw out the kind of big numbers there if you agree, and I'm going to say that fairly widespread 20-mile-per-hour winds. That definitely kind of stresses the system as well, continuing into your Saturday. A little bit less once we start increasing some of that icing threat. And then whatever those showers are that are kicking that up, I don't know what that is. That's really interesting on that. But I think most of our projections pretty consistent on the fact that there are some gusty winds with this for sure.
Oh yeah, and that's going to drop temperatures, those feels like values, wind chill values, going to be even more absurd than what those temperatures will be. So anytime you have that wind aspect, it just makes that dangerous cold feel even more dangerous to an nth degree. I don't really know how else to describe it. Otherwise, it's going to be cold.
Yeah, I agree. So before we move on here, I do want to, again, kind of give the overall assessment on Ice Finder. I'm going to talk through Ice Finder, snow, and then I want you to kind of talk back and forth on like how all the other projections kind of feed into this. That work?
Sounds good.
Okay, so something, again, you'll see only here on Mississippi Live is Ice Finder. And Ice Finder, well, pretty much does what it says. We look at the likelihood of something happening, and we look at the amount of something that could happen. We kind of see where the overlap between those two things are. And obviously, the big concern is how much ice we see. Thursday, Friday, we don't really have that concern. It's Saturday that those chances increase. As you can see, confidence, the likelihood of something happening, where you have the darker colors there, the more the oranges and reds, that's where it becomes highly confident of something happening. And certainly into Arkansas, back out there into Oklahoma and North Texas, where the confidence is greatest, at least in the early portion there of Saturday morning. But our confidence increases as we progress into the day, and certainly back into Arkansas. Real concerns with how this plays out there. If you saw some of the ridiculous snowfall totals floating around social media, the reason you didn't see anything out of us on that was because of our concern, again, of that snow eater and then producing this. So confidence remains, again, highest for that more significant ice. Back out here, looking at the latest data, still back into Arkansas, but also into the Delta and potentially Northwest Mississippi here as well. So there's not a lot of folks where I can say snow is your primary threat. I would say for most of us, if we see wintry stuff, it's the icing in the form of both that horizontal icing that disrupts traffic and radial icing that potentially brings down trees and causes issues with power lines and things of that. Those are the two most likely scenarios. But in either case, we're still Wednesday, looking all the way between now and late Sunday. This shows Monday, but this shows by then the confidence is all out of here, that this is what's left over there. So concerns, as that confidence increases, that there definitely could be some travel troubles with this. And then obviously the other factors. Now, Snow Finder, this is an important thing to show you. I'm going to go back to Snow Finder as opposed to Rain Finder here for a moment. Snow Finder, when we're looking for the snow, we're looking for the confidence. You're not going to see very high confidence on this because the confidence is much higher. But yeah, out here on the plains, where you start showing, again, those reds and purples out there toward western Kansas, that out there toward Hays, Kansas, right there, that purple in the middle is 90% confidence that you're getting accumulating snowfall. By the way, my hometown's right about there in Russell. So they're high confidence of snowfall out of this versus what you will see here, which is much, much, much lower confidence. Despite the fact that this is going to kick out a little bit of snowfall, the confidence is much greater in this stripe up here from Springfield, Missouri, back out toward Cape Girardeau, and out there toward northern Tennessee, north of Nashville. And again, up to the north, where you start to see, again, these kind of purple colors, not just on the accumulation, but also on the lines. That's where it's much, much more likely to see something than it is farther south. Now, our confidence in maybe seeing some snowfall, if we're going to see it on the backside of this system, that's when things start to increase. But as you'll note here, even on this, there's some spots where even in the most aggressive accumulation projections, we don't have it into the area. So the takeaway is this: flakes, maybe; ice, much, much more likely. And trying to figure out the consistency between all of that is our meteorologist, Gabe Maynard. That's been his task today. And one of the things that he is breaking down, again, looking at the different model projections. That's been kind of your task all week long, actually. Now we have more data to work off of here because we're closer to it. And so our high resolution models are starting to come in.
Exactly. And so kind of getting an alignment on that, models have been inputting the new data. So all of that, trying to get lined up and get a better idea on how things are going to go. Now I have a whole list of tabs, took your advice yesterday and got those tabs together. And so what we're going to start with is the model consistency between all the different model groups. And I do have your chat here on my phone, so if there are any questions, I'll try and look at that and be able to answer those in just a moment. But what we're looking at is the start time. And as you can see, we're 0Z on Saturday, which is equivalent to 6 p.m. on Friday. And as you can see, a large batch of that moisture is still out there towards Arkansas. Now, this is the Euro. This is one of the more optimistic models that there won't be as many impacts. But as you can see, lining this up with other model groups, it's not an impossibility that we see all of this start later on into the really early evening time frame of our Friday. As you can see, even GFS does have some of that wintry mix, but that's still out in Arkansas, just crossing the river by 6 p.m. And other model groups kind of aligning with that as well. There are a few things that stand out, and of course, the NSSL model showing a little bit of that moisture moving in. Not one we typically rely on in this fashion. Ones that we pay attention to are the Euro, the GFS, the NAM 3K, one of our high resolution models we look at. And as you can see, this is NAM, and I'll have to stand over here for you to get a visual. Still all the way out there in southern Arkansas, and one of the higher resolution model groups of that, still pushing all of that into Arkansas. Now that NAM 3K, that's that higher resolution run that I was talking about a moment ago. But nonetheless, just showing the start time, already showing that it's a little bit later on into our Friday compared to the Friday afternoon time frame. So like Matt was mentioning with school, are we going to school Friday? Yes, but are we coming back from school a little bit early? That's still the question, but if models continue to trend how they have been, I think that we may get a full school day if we continue to trend in this direction. But then we get into a different category, and that's going to be comparing run to run of each specific model group. And we're starting with the GFS run and going all the way back to the 19th when those model runs were coming out and jumping ahead to the 21st, the current day. So as we carry this out, you can see that it was very ambitious on getting that moisture here by 6 p.m. on Friday. But watch how this has gradually trended back as we've gotten more into the 21st and really into the 21st. We've seen that kind of recede just a bit. Started to see it last night with those model runs, but as we've gotten more into the 20th, and Michael, you can kind of see recede a good bit. And so what this is trending towards is a later start time. So that means we can wrap up anything that needs to get done on Friday and go ahead and get school and workday done. Euro lining up with that as well. If we drag this out, and I'm just going to drag it out really quickly, you can kind of see that there is that mixed precipitation. Let me actually drag it down just a bit. There is still that mixed precipitation, but a large portion of that now starting out in Arkansas. So meaning Friday, I'm optimistic that we're able to get through the majority of our Friday before any of that winter weather threat moves into play. One of the other trends that we're watching, it's the warmer air. And we're going to look at, this is a little bit too early. I'm going to jump ahead to, let's go all the way to Saturday at noon. And I want to look back at some of the temperatures that they've been having. And as you can see, this is the 18th, the 0Z run on the 18th with the European model, showing that it's 39 degrees Lee County, so it's a little bit warmer, and then 44 all the way down there towards Oktibbeha County and Lowndes County. Now, as we've gotten into that forecast, the cold temperature definitely just surged into the area, and that's what was showing a little bit of that snowfall potential a little bit further south. Well, as we've gotten into that extended pattern, you can see how that cold line has gradually receded, now going to be basically right across the Natchez Trace corridor and then up there towards the north and west. So highest chance of seeing a few flakes, northwest Mississippi. The further south and east you go, that's where we're going to see some of that melt, especially throughout the upper atmosphere, allowing for sleet or potentially even rainfall to reach its way all the way to the surface. So some folks in the chat were talking, it's just going to be cold rain. No. Not exactly. And the reason why is because up in the northwest, it is still going to be cold enough to support some of that winter precipitation. If it's flakes, honestly, that'd be the best case scenario in this circumstance, but also expecting some of those sleet pellets as well. So no, not cold rain. We're still tracking winter precipitation. And even if it does fall as a cold rain, the temperatures at the surface later into your Saturday going to be cold enough to where that water freezes. And that's where we're getting some of that ice accumulation as well. And it's not just the Euro that's forecasting this. The GFS, of course, this is one where Matt mentioned it earlier, has been trending more on the colder side. And if we drag this out, we can kind of see how that cold air just surged into the area once again, getting some of those temperatures by, oh wait, this is still Friday. I need to jump ahead to, let me find the right time. Let's go here. Let's go to 60 hours after. So, As we drag this out, this is going to be more Saturday morning. I need to go further than that. Come on, mouse. Where do we need to go? Let's go all the way out here to 18Z on Saturday, which is, again, noontime on our Saturday. So if we keep this going, I'm going to go ahead and drag this out. We can see each model run and how this has trended. So as you can see, extremely cold air reaching into North Mississippi, and that's what has really supported that snowfall forecast. And if you've seen any of those models on your social media, it likely has been pulled from the GFS because it's been the most ambitious, the most aggressive. They know that's going to get the most clicks. And we're not about clicks here at Mississippi Live Weather. We're about the truth, and that's what we want to provide for you here at the 6 o'clock hour. So as we go into those model runs, and again, this is noontime on Saturday. Look at how cold we're talking about. I mean, upper teens by lunchtime on Saturday. That's extreme cold forecast, and of course, that would support any winter weather development. But as we've gotten more into the forecast for the 20th, it's still been around that same margin, but watch how that green line right there, that, again, lined up with the Natchez Trace corridor for the European model, now starting to trend a little bit more in that northerly direction as well. But still, temperatures being forecasted in the teens up around the Tennessee state line. What that means, I know that's a lot of data, it just basically might have gone right over your head. Let me tell you what it summarizes to. It's going to be more than likely some liquid precipitation down there south of the Golden Triangle, even for parts of the Golden Triangle, not out of the question. But where we start to get some of that wintry precipitation, this is what Matt was tracking on Ice Finder, that's where it's going to be sleet and freezing rain for that Natchez Trace corridor, working our way towards the northwest. I'm not going to be shocked at all to get a few flakes in that forecast and maybe some accumulating snowfall even on the front end of the system. Now, as we get going with the rest of that forecast, of course, we are going to be tracking that in more detail with how much we're going to expect. So let me go ahead and get this on the latest model run. And this is going to be our GFS model, which has come out with that 18Z run. So as that drags out, we'll be able to visualize the more aggressive part of those models. Matt tracked the strike model just a moment ago. And if we keep this moving, and let me go ahead and get that clicked, and we're just going to go hour by hour. We're talking early dealing with some of those scattered showers, but as we get into our Thursday night, you can see how things clear up. A brief dry spell. We'll need that moisture to rebuild in North Mississippi if we're going to get any chance at some of that precipitation earlier on our Friday. Otherwise, Friday will be the real rebuilding time to get some of that moisture back into the forecasts. And as you can see, GFS trying to do exactly that. Getting that moisture rebuilt. We're at 6 p.m. Friday night, getting that wintry slush off there towards southern Arkansas that tries to work its way into North Mississippi. Still, some of those greens showing up, so temperatures might not fully be there to support any of that wintry mix just yet. Those are dropping though, so that wintry mix is expected to happen at some point during your weekend. That's why folks saying it's just going to be cold rain. No. It's not going to be cold rain for the full duration. We're going to be watching that wintry mix try to move into the area from Friday night all the way up until Sunday, potentially afternoon. And let's go ahead and track this out because that's one of the differences in these models is it's pushed it back a little bit later and basically pushed back the entire system. So we're starting later, but we're going to be ending later as well. So let's go ahead and look at that. Saturday. You can see all those purples showing up. That purple is going to be that wintry mix. The red, more of the freezing rain where it could fall as liquid precipitation, but once it reaches the ground, it's cold enough to support some of that freezing there at the surface. So as we get into our Saturday, you can see that blue line still remaining up there around Tennessee. That's where we expect the flakes to form, but then you get some of that mixed precipitation, allowing for potential for flakes over there in the northwest part of the area. You kind of see that southwest and northeast orientation right here. Expect that throughout the entirety of this line. So yes, flakes possible up around DeSoto, Tunica, and Tate County getting into our Saturday afternoon. But the thing that concerns me is the fact that once we get into Saturday afternoon, even the more aggressive models with the cold air showing that we are getting at least a few of those liquid drops to reach the surface. And look at how heavy we're talking on that freezing rain potential. All the way through the Alabama state line, all the way through the Golden Triangle, and all the way along Highway 82. So that's going to allow for that to freeze at the surface and accumulate on those power lines, accumulate on those trees. And that's where the ice forecast is not exactly ideal. One of the things that we've talked about throughout the day is I asked Matt yesterday, Matt, is snowfall the best case scenario? And he said, yes, 1,000,000% because of the icing potential. And so if any of this does fall to the surface, then we are going to be dealing with that freezing potential, and that weighs on those power lines. Snowfall doesn't weigh on it as much. It's more picturesque as well. A lot of positives I could say with snow that we are definitely rooting for here at Mississippi Live Weather. So if you see a snowfall graphic come out from us, know that it is with the best interest that we're hoping for that in this scenario. But more than likely, this is looking like more of an ice event. Still going to be impactful, but it's still, it's just not going to be the typical winter wonderland that we long for in these setups. So as we keep going into our Sunday, you can see how that mix tries to remain in the forecast. And as we get into our Sunday morning, mid-morning, we continue to see that development overhead. One of the big notes with this forecast, still see the mix for the start of Sunday. As we go about the rest of our Sunday, though, look at this blue, trying to move into the forecast. That's where I'm not ruling out a few flakes on the back end of this system, because that air will be so much colder and more supporting for those flakes to form and reach all the way to the surface. So my wife, she texts me all the time, Gabe, is it going to be snow? Is it going to be rain? Is it going to be freezing rain? I do expect that a few flakes are going to try to form in North Mississippi getting into the back end of this system. And at that point, you're going to have that frozen ground. That's going to support those flakes to stick around potentially in some of those heavier spots as well. So those trying to work their way into the region and clearing on out by the time we get into our Monday. Now that's the GFS model. Euro model going to be more rainfall. I'm going to try to pull that up here real quick and get a visual on that. But I know this is a lot of information, but basically showing you all the possibilities and everything that you're going to see on social media. We need to go ahead and address that, because I don't want you guys to be to fear that or to be worried if it's the truth. And so that's where I wanted to go through it. So as we get into our Euro model, and I'll try to go through this quickly, you can kind of see as we get through our Friday, still dealing with that drier air up front, but then we get that mix moving into the area, and again, heavy on that freezing rain potential. But that line of melting is going to be a little bit more towards the north on the European model, because temperatures are also so much warmer than compared to the GFS. But those heavier sections showing that there is a decent freezing rain potential out of the European as well, but that's where it tries to move that rainfall a little bit more north. So that's where there is still a discrepancy in these models, and we're hoping to get more of an answer on that as more of the high-resolution runs come out, because I do feel like, based off personal what I've watched over the past couple of days, that European is a little bit on the higher side, GFS is on the lower side. We're going to meet somewhere in that middle realm. Where exactly? That's the question still heading into this event. And right now, we're getting some of those high-resolution models coming out, only on the front end of the event, but we're going to look at that in more detail tonight. We're then going to get our other high-resolution models to come out tomorrow, lining those two things up for start time, for duration, for impacts. That's where we'll get it better aligned. So folks that are saying, they don't know what they're talking about. Well, accumulating totals this far out, and yes, this is still a decent time out of the event, that's where it just becomes an impossibility. Anyone saying that there is an exact value, pinpoint accuracy, you're just not going to get that. And so don't be alarmed by that. Don't listen to it this far out. Just understand that there will be impacts, and there's reasons why we say go ahead and get that safety plan in place. How that goes about it? Well, right now we're checking that forecast, especially prior to any travel. A lot of folks asking, can I drive on Friday? Can I get out the door Saturday morning? I would say Friday, we need to get to where we need to go. Friday evening, we need to be there, and then be ready to stay there for an extended period of time. One thing that I'm probably going to go do here probably right after the show, and especially during Friday, is filling the gas tank, checking the tire pressure, making sure everything's good to go in the vehicle, maybe even having backups if you do have to get out on those roadways, because we don't want you to get stuck and potentially get stalled out and get stuck in this event, because then it'd just be a dangerous situation. Letting folks know that you're out on the roadways, letting them know where you're trying to go, so that way if there is the chance that you get stuck, they'll be able to track where you're at and bring help for those situations. Pack that emergency supply kit, which we'll look at here in a moment. The biggest thing is there at the bottom: avoid travel. If not comfortable, just avoid travel in this situation. And if stranded, remain in that vehicle. Don't try to battle the elements, because it's going to be the potential for wintry mix. It's also going to be the extreme cold, and especially towards early parts of next week. All right, what we're going to be tracking, and I got to find the right graphic here real quick, is that that kit. Here's a look at your kit that you need to be putting together. And I think that some of the things we could go ahead and rule out, like you don't need a rope, you don't need sandbags, but the biggest things right here, food and water, having that in the car. One of the best stories about growing up that I have was back in 2014, it was a more significant ice event in Alabama. We got stranded, the Mainers did, but my mom got stranded all the way at school. No food, no water, no anything like that whenever she was driving around, and she got stranded for hours on end. Well, from that day, she has packed these little potato sticks in the back of the car and a bottle of water. So she'll always have that food if needed, and it's in just in case format. But I don't know if I was supposed to let her secret out, but yes, she does that to prepare for the occasional event that may happen. That was back in 2014. It's now 12 years from there, And I don't think they've seen an event like it in Alabama. So there's a little bit of perspective, not exactly a frequent occurrence, but one that we can get prepared for. That first aid kit essential as well. Batteries, blankets, definitely going to be needed to accommodate for your flashlights, for staying warm with those blankets, having a phone charger. Go ahead and charge those phones Thursday night and keep that charger around Friday, because if your power does go out, it will be out for potentially an extended period of time. And we want you guys to stay safe and stay informed. Now, cat litter, you might be wondering why that's there. That's if you do try to get out on these roadways, even with an ATV or things like that, you're going to be dealing with traction issues. So if your vehicles get stuck by chance, you can lay that on the ground and it'll give you a little bit of traction to get out of anything that you may be in. All that to say, don't get on the roadways, but if there is any chance, hey, go ahead and get some cat litter. I'm sure that's still at Walmart, right? But that's just one of the hacks that we can have in those situations. What we're going to be talking about here is also these road conditions. One of the big things is just safety tips if we're getting out on those roadways, and a few recommendations as well as we track this out. Road conditions, if they're just wet, if they're that rainfall, we know how to drive in rainfall. We've done it time and time again, so you don't need to know any of these tips, but just be safe on those roadways, because it's not just the wet roadways that we're tracking, it's also the potential for some snowy conditions a little bit up north. Don't get on the roadways if you don't have to. Don't try and get up hills. Don't lock up your brakes. Don't stop when going up a hill. There's a hill right in front of my neighborhood from growing up, and there was an individual who, I don't know why we were trying to brave going up this hill, but shout out Jerry Maynor. We were going up this hill and the car got all the way to the top, thought he was there, and then he just gunned it, got the acceleration going, and then lost all the traction. And it was a domino effect all the way down the hill. And it was a fender bender all the way down as well. So that's why we say don't do it. Avoid hills, avoid accelerating and decelerating quickly. Just a gradual trend as we go about that forecast. The forecast that we expect to have, though, this is where it lines up a little bit more, that ice and slush forecast. Here's what we need to do. We need to reduce speed. Avoid driving if at all possible. That second point, that's when I want to underline, bold, all caps, everything, because we don't need to be on the roadways in these conditions. It makes for hazardous driving conditions and potential wrecks, and you don't want to get stuck out in this forecast, like I mentioned a moment ago. So avoid those hills, avoid sudden stops, avoid the roads if at all possible. And watch how this carries over. Watch that second bullet point. All right, you ready? Notice how it didn't change. So whether it's icy or slushy or snowy, we're not getting on the roadways. And I want you guys to make a promise for me on that, because it's just a hazardous commute. Avoid driving if at all possible and reduce that speed. Just stay safe, guys. This is an event that has extreme potential to make for a rough situation, make for a dangerous situation. Folks could be stranded out in the cold for a while. And we want you guys to be safe whenever this does strike. Even if it's just a rainy forecast, those temperatures are cold enough to where that rain falls and it's on the surface and it'll refreeze. And that's where that potential for icing comes into play, whether it's a snowy forecast or not. And honestly, guys, like I mentioned a moment ago, we are wanting snow in this circumstance. It just doesn't seem as likely here, especially Golden Triangle, up the Natchez Trace corridor, but maybe around DeSoto County, it's more of the flake forecast. Either way, stay safe on those roads. Don't get out on it if you don't have to. Find what you need to stay at home for a couple of days. And of course, we'll be tracking that through the event with you. And if anything were to be known that's going to change, we'll of course alert you first thing here in the Room to Room Weather Center. But Matt, this is an interesting time, but a time to get prepared. Everyone wanting answers in regards to accumulating totals, what they can expect exactly. Those aren't the answers that we're going to get right now. The answers we're going to get is how we're going to stay safe, how we're going to stay prepared, and stay informed heading into the event.
Yeah, and confidence, of course, on what type of precipitation, which is, again, unfortunately, probably more ice than what I'm going to show you here. Appreciate Wanda for using the Mississippi Live Weather app to send in this beautiful picture of snow and the way in which you have to take care of it when you have a blade that can go on your tractor up there in Wisconsin. Appreciate Wanda for sharing this using the Mississippi Live Weather app. Of course, you can share your photos in the app as well. You just have to go on the left-hand part of the screen. Actually, let me double check. Yeah, no, submit pictures. I'm sorry. You got to go down on the home screen there below our video. And there's a place for you to tap submit pictures, send your picture in, choose your picture, and it'll ship it right off to us. Now, I will say, if it doesn't work the first time, it's done this crashing thing on me occasionally recently, and I sent something out to the developer, have not heard back today. You swipe out of the app, come back in. It usually works the second time. I hope it doesn't take that. But we've done a lot here in about a year. haven't perfected everything, unfortunately. One thing we did perfect, our meteorologist Gabe Maynor, who you heard talking a moment ago there, and our meteorologist Maggie McCauley. She'll have updates tomorrow morning, as she has every weekday, 6:37, 7:30 a.m. here in the Room to Room Weather Center. Updates related to this winter weather and obviously that ice trend that we're looking at. I'll probably join her again somewhere in that 7:30 time period. We'll see how that times out for tomorrow, but you can check her out every weekday morning for latest on everything related to the weather. But obviously in the near term here, we're talking about the ice potential related to that as well. And we encourage you to join the conversation in our chat on all the different social medias. But if you have not yet, please encourage you to download our Mississippi Live Weather app. It's a free app. A lot of people have used it. I saw easily the highest number on the watch, while Gabe was talking a minute ago there. There's a lot of you that, of course, have tuned in and watched with us over the last couple of days, certainly highest number we've had so far. But we're not doing this for that. We're doing this to try to keep you ahead of active weather and safe. But one of the things Gabe's going to be working out at 10 o'clock as we bring it back here to Gabe and talk about that again as we continue to see the evolution of this as well. What else do you have, Gabe?
Well, so honestly, a big thing for models moving forward. So an update, hurricane hunters are actually going into the system off of the Pacific right now and going to collect data on the system. All of that is going to be ingested into overnight models heading into tonight. That's going to be a big determining factor for what we can expect moving forward, because that's current data being put into the system, not projected using so far. It'll be a big development overnight. We'll get those latest GFS runs, the strike model runs coming up at 10 o'clock tonight, and we can assess that in more detail. And it might line up with what we've had so far. It might be a little bit different, and I think that's one of the answers that we'll be able to get at 10 o'clock tonight.
Okay, hopefully that's the case. Again, at 10 o'clock is our next live broadcast this evening here. We're live every day, 5, 6, and 10 p.m., 6:37, 7:30 a.m. We appreciate everyone for liking, subscribing. It does look as though we might have some of those comments coming back in, so we can address that chat. I'll pop that chat up here to just kind of check and see. And it was on there for just a split second. Put it back on there. It does look like we might be getting those chat comments back in there. So for whatever outage we had with the folks there at the restream, that certainly looks things are better at this point here. But yes, no, I want to be crystal clear to Lori. Lori's saying we went from 3 inches of ice to cold rain. Number one, we never said 3 inches of ice. I don't know what phone app you have, but you need to take that. You can press it on your phone and then hit delete and get rid of it. Whatever app you had there, Lori, we never said 3 inches of ice. But ice is still very much on the table to go along with rainfall. The thing is when we say freezing rain, you might just think, oh, a cold rain, and that's not what it is at all. Freezing rain equals ice storm. So when people talk about an ice storm, I remember an ice storm, what they're talking about is freezing rain. So I think that's one of those terms that gets lost in translation a little bit here. When we're talking about what this could be, and we're talking about these freezing rain amounts, and we're talking about this horizontal ice, the radial ice that gets on power lines and stuff like that, that is freezing rain, not just cold rain, but rain that's below freezing and thus weighs down all those surfaces and produces the ice storm effect. So to be crystal clear on this, I think that something's gotten lost in translation, but ice storm very much still on the table, and I would say is the most likely outcome for many of you watching this is an ice storm that causes travel disruptions for multiple days and makes it to where you're stuck wherever you're at for a little while and possibly cause power disruptions and all those other things that unfortunately we don't want to think about. So again, this is kind of the big headline here. Don't miss this, and I'm not talking around this. Rainfall for some locations has increased, and it's going to be quite a bit of rainfall. Snowfall, less and less likely. But this ice, we have at the same confidence level as yesterday, and as we get closer, we'll continue to increase. This is our most likely outcome for a lot of us, which is why the travel impacts are going to be an issue. And with cold temperatures behind this, the reason why we're talking about multiple days of temperatures that are below freezing and potentially In some cases, close to or a little bit below zero. I see Rob Smith asking me next there, right about there on YouTube, when will winter storm warnings be issued? It's not impossible those come out tomorrow. Typically, they come out about 24 hours or so before the precipitation's supposed to begin. So late tomorrow seems reasonable. Midday to late tomorrow, that maybe those winter storm warnings are going to be issued. In saying that, there is no winter weather issues of concern tomorrow. We're not going to have that tomorrow. It's just rain, it's warmer, and most of Wednesday is as well. But those winter storm warnings could come out as soon as potentially, probably tomorrow at some point there. Finna go work on our tractors and four-wheelers. You know what? If your work's making you come in on a tractor, more power to you, but you'll probably be helping drag some of those four-wheel drive vehicles out of the ditch. Nothing against four-wheel drive, but four-wheel drive does not mean four-wheel stop. And that's the thing to keep in mind as far as that is concerned there. Now, Brittany says, sound like day after tomorrow sort of stuff. Listen, there will be, and I think, I'm trying to think of the best, we've shown a lot of different graphics today. A lot of different ways, but I'm going to show you something ugly. I think ugly does the best job. And again, because I'm the European apologist, how is that not a hashtag yet? Or maybe that actually should be merch, Gabe. We need to write that down. I'm a European apologist. Let's look here at, this would be the Euro from 12Z, and this is, again, ugly stuff. I'll pop that on there. Okay, so this shows that warm air trying to truck north, and this is, again, as aggressive as pretty much any projection can for Saturday afternoon. We show Tupelo up there below freezing. We show Columbus above freezing, and you see this warm air working its way northward there. That is our snow eater at the surface that extends aloft and bends back over this. And as it bends back over all this cold air, that's what melts pretty snowflakes into something else and then falls in this cold air and produces that ice. So it is not inconceivable that 10 o'clock, Gabe is talking about a shift in this position. Now, we can look at our various projections at this time, and let's go ahead and stop a moment and do just that. I think Gabe has talked a little bit about this, but I want to go ahead and do it myself here for just a moment, looking at kind of the current models at this point here. And what you'll notice still, the European is one of the warmest. Almost all of our projections are considerably colder than that. But all that to say that European also led the way on how warm it was in our area and catching this warming trend before it happened on any other projection. So is it leading the way or has it gone too far? That's something Gabe will be looking at in more detail coming up at 10 o'clock as well. Brittany's saying it's totally a joke. No, I get that. But at the same time, I think for every nervous joke we crack in this situation, there's a little bit of truth to it. It's like, I mean, I've always said that more people watch winter weather than tornado weather because at least in tornadoes, we know to be scared or guys are going to go to the front porch and do what they do. But when we start talking about winter weather, it can be the whole slew of things. It's all on the plate. I'm going to check Reverend Luna for a second here. Now, I'm the one up here pontificating real quick, so I'm about to wrap up here in a second. I promise. Oh, I'm sorry. You're good. Okay, you're good. Bye. Okay, with that in mind, we probably should, will this be winter mix, snow plus ice plus rain? Rob Smith wants to know. It'll be a winter mix, but snow? About that long. I don't know. We're talking a bunch of snow. I see Marcellus there saying snow in Ackerman. Keep saying it. I'm just not sure it's it, unless maybe on the very backside we get a little bit. Damn snow eaters. Can't stand them. Darn. Shouldn't have just read that one straight out. But either way, the warm air largely wins this. And I see it. I'm there with you, Brittany. Don't want this, in Jesus' name, please allow this. Here's the thing. If it's going to be snow, people cheer for it, but nobody cheers for ice outside of maybe, people that have car repair places, from all the wrecks. And even then, I think they'd prefer something, other ways, to make money. So nobody cheers for ice. And so we're at this point here where it probably doesn't wobble back to all snow. So now we really, if you're looking for your targeted prayers, need to be praying the warm air winds out, and this is just cold rainfall. It was a bunch of hubbubaloo for nothing. Now listen, that would make us look really bad. But I'm all for it if we don't have power outages and everything else that goes with it. So if you're looking for targeted praying, that's what we're praying for here, is we're praying that warm air winds out. And the people are intelligent on the way it is. Wish we had snow in Amory. I mean, listen, this could bob south. We could see the cold air, win out, but all the way to snowfall to Amory would really be pushing it at this stage. At least snowfall of packing significance there. So appreciate everybody for, kind of chiming in, joining the conversation, all of your support. You've seen all these sponsors kind of next to me on the screen here. Support the folks that support us here in Mississippi Live Weather, the Eat With Us group, folks up there at Exceed Technologies. I mean, you've seen multiple people, there. And make sure to download our apps for Apple TV and Roku. No, we do not, unfortunately, have Fire Stick up and going. I know that's always a conversation here. But that's something that hopefully will work out. We are on YouTube. We have a lot of people watch us on YouTube, and YouTube typically works on your smart TVs. Okay, so we will see you coming up at 10 o'clock. I'm going to look here on the screen to see if Gabe has anything else to chime in on. I'm looking up there at the top. You pop in there, look for a thumbs up, thumbs down on Gabe if he has anything else, and I think we'll wrap it up here. Compare and contrast. You're good? Okay. Robert Garrett there. I do think this is a relevant comment. Compare and contrast Nashville area versus how it affects us in Union County. In Nashville, it is cold enough that it will be ice and or snow. In Union County, it will probably be ice. It will probably not be snow. It might, God willing, hedge over to more rainfall, but you're in that zone where it's most likely to have some icing issues there. And when folks are talking about guesstimates on ice, the reason I'm not yet going to float a guesstimate on ice is because of this. If I show you, again, accumulated precipitation, basically rainfall totals, right? This is what, again, that euro that I'm, again, a self-proclaimed apologist on, all the way to the end of this event. I'm going to have to go, let's go 84 hours and see how it has a lot of heavy rainfall there on the back end. I think that's primarily rainfall that you see there. During the icing portion of this, it's probably more, inch or less of liquid precipitation, maybe up inch and a half of liquid precipitation looking at that. But if we kind of compare run to run, I'll go to there, 84 hours, and we'll compare that, the different models on the amount of moisture, pretty consistently, inch of rainfall, perhaps more than that, showing up in basically all of our projections there. So that's a lot of liquid rainfall if you melted it all down. But some of that, and maybe a decent chunk of that, ends up falling as sleet and ice. And that's where the concerns come in. So certainly that's the reason we're not talking about the official accumulation amounts, because it could be really, really rough. And to address what James says there, my guess is with all the rain, even without ice, won't that freeze Monday, Tuesday and cause some road hazards? It could. There's enough wind with this that if you're lucky enough that this isn't ice, that maybe the wind comes in and dries out some of those roads. But there will be icicles on roofs. And someone's mentioning there, concerned with a Mississippi State student leaving Starkville to come home to Northeast Mississippi for the weekend, not being able to travel back to school. That's definitely a possibility that it could be, depending on how far north they go, that Starkville could be in class on Monday, and all the folks there, and that if you're far enough north that you can't get back. Real possibility that's the case. So anyway, closer to Tennessee State 9 to address Debbie's question there, rather than go city by city on this. I think icing still very much in the cards for you up there in Tishomingo County. I would say Alcorn, Tippah, back up in Northwest Mississippi, icing still main factor. We're hoping maybe some folks there can get some snow, but again, hope and reality may be disjointed in this situation here. So, okay, and yeah, I will address that. So why is Monroe County? Clearly, I am not doing a good job here of communicating this. So I want to be as clear as possible. And I think probably the best way to do that is to show the watch warning map here and to address that. Let's have this on the current time here. Why are all these folks in the winter storm watch? So you will probably still see it's still very reasonable if you're in this watch that you see ice. What I showed you a minute ago is that there are some indications the warmer air tries to go farther north. But you're here in Monroe County, my expectation, my forecast still is that you see ice. How much is the question? But you probably still see freezing rain, sleet, and rainfall. But that freezing rain is ice. So that's the reason Monroe County, Clay County, Oktibbeha, Lowndes, Winston County, and down here south toward Jackson are all in it. You will still probably see icing in these spots. Today is Wednesday. We've got Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Positioning, and it's all going to change. It's all going to tweak. We look for the trends. That's how we adjust the forecast. But right now, if you're in blue, I'd be preparing for this to be an ice storm situation for you in at least some form or fashion where travel is disrupted and potentially impassable for a few days. Certainly farther north, it could be longer. Certainly farther north, the odds are greater. But if you're in this blue, I would be expecting travel disruptions. And I'm sorry that I didn't do a clear enough job communicating that. I think sometimes that's some of the things that gets lost in translation here. I see somebody mentioning historic event. That is by no means a guarantee. The warm air on this could save us from that. And when we look at the historic events here in North Mississippi, as you heard Scott Hendricks with the Tom Bigby Electric Power Association talking about a little earlier on, they've done work to hopefully make sure infrastructure is in better shape, that tree trimming is in better shape, so that you don't have one of those kind of historic long-term issues. But yes, significant ice is absolutely possible. But with 3 days to go, historic is something we're going to reserve for a greater confidence level. We will see you coming up here at 10 o'clock. We're late enough here. We'll do a little quick prayer and we'll move on. Dear God, please help folks to intelligently navigate the next couple of days. Direct them toward trusted sources of information, whether myself or the National Weather Service or any of our affiliate partners here on the National Weather Network. And God, I just pray that you help that warmer air to win out and the icing situation to not be dramatic, and that whatever icing occurs to not be the stuff that sticks to the lines and causes power outages and trees down. And just, help people to make wise choices, get them to where they need to go. Okay. Help them to be prepared, but not panicked. And thank you so much for supporting, what we're doing here. I mean, obviously as one of your children, that you always want good for us, but just thank you for this opportunity to speak, into these folks and to these folks and prepare them for this. Pray this in Jesus' name, amen. Okay, we will see you at 10 o'clock. I may or may not pop in at 10 o'clock. I think it's largely going to be Gabe at that point in time. I will see you tomorrow morning on Mississippi Live Weather with our Maggie McCauley. Again, time frame on that there are broadcasts 5, 6, and 10 in the Room to Room Weather Center in the evenings, 6:37, 7:30 a.m. And Maggie is definitely going to be have her hands full with everything going on, but she can take care of that. She can take care of Maya. She can keep me on track. She can take care of all that. 6:37, 7:30 a.m. here in the Room to Room Weather Center. And make sure to download all of the apps on the different places. We appreciate everybody who has supported us and continues to support us here on Mississippi Live Weather. We'll see you at 10.